Okay. Just give us a couple of minutes. Hey, while we're waiting, did you see the lesson plan template Google posted yesterday?
Yeah, but I didn't look at it yet. Is it good or bad?
I don't like it. I'm writing a blog post on it. Yes.
Here's another slide deck resource you can give them.
Okay, I'll add that one.
So what are you guys doing? Just hanging out or what?
Yeah, kind of. But then it's good because we have a business relationship to chat about stuff and be on the same page. So it's productive and fun.
That's nice.
I know. And Shelly and I might be dangerous to feed off of each other.
Oh my
I
God.
feed it all and make myself look extra crazy.
Those are the best types.
I think so.
I do too.
Yes, I would like to control all of education. All right, so it's only 5 o'clock right now, so let's give them some
Wait time?
yeah, a little bit of wait time. There's things going on around me. One sent me a tweet. What are
So, okay, are these
examples of lesson plan styles? So, you know, this Reading Rainbow one they put out is basically now 30 years old.
Oh, geez.
And there's nothing innovative about it, and it's a teacher-centered lesson. It's like, is this the lesson plan we should be giving new teachers?
Yeah.
So that's the question of my blog post. I'm like, what are other things we should consider in this lesson plan template?
Mm-hmm.
What helps facilitate you to innovate? I should put that in there. So anyways, like, you know, I'm disappointed. You know what? If they had just posted that and some others, I could have stomached it. But first of all, it's inexcusable for Reading Rainbow to put their name on something they just downloaded off the internet.
Yeah.
And their Reading Rainbow tips are not Reading Rainbow tips. These are just the generic stuff every single one of us got when we were in teacher school. So not helpful. You know, if Reading Rainbow is going to make lesson plan template, how about it focuses on how to teach literacy in a modern age?
Exactly.
But instead, no. They cheesed out.
But you know what? I don't think a lot of people know how to teach literacy in a modern age. I can pretty much guarantee.
This is why a template
a lot of people do.
is really helpful. So, I mean,
well, I'm going to create one. Dang it.
Shaelynn?
Yeah, basically, I'm going to create one.
Please do.
I'll
blog it.
Thank you. Do you have that other blog post I wrote? I sent that to you, right? Publishing?
Yeah, and just I spaced things out.
You're gonna like that one. That's a good one.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Okay, I'm excited about it. So I'm a little surprised. There were several students, like this should be a good time relatively for my students, and several of them said they were going to come.
I know. I mean, my name alone sounds fun. Oh, I was going to ask you, okay, so these students are primarily sophomores, juniors?
No, they've graduated from college or about to graduate from college. So
Okay.
CI-139 is they would like to be teachers. So this is the prerequisite to get into the credential program. In theory. I do have some students who are farther along in the credential process, but for the most part, this is their first lesson plan ever, their first introduction to teacher vocabulary, stuff like that.
Okay. And most of these teachers will stay in California, do you think?
Probably.
Do they usually teach
getting
where
a
they go?
California teaching credential.
And is California a Common Core state?
Yep.
Okay. Yes, we are. Or Iowa Core, because we're difficult.
Is it really different? If you look it up, are the standards really different?
No, there's only additional ones in some of the grade level standards. So no, they didn't change anything.
Backlash on Common Core of people who just spread dirty lies. And so in response, I've noticed some of the states, they take the Common Core and just name it something else.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Basically, they're still doing, no matter what, almost every state is asking kids to be critical thinkers, to bring in multiple sources and analyze and compare and contrast, different types of media, different angles, different perspectives, rather than, hey, let's just write a paper.
Exactly.
All right. I'll just wait a few more minutes to see. Seriously, they have like 6 students. Do you have that today's meet or the Padlet open? Did any of them respond to that?
No.
This is unusual. Oh, you can join it. Okay, great. Okay, so we have one student who's watching, so we should probably stop boring her. So if you want to get it started, would you like me to, would it be okay if I tweeted this out for people to join?
Sure. Have them join. Join on in the fun, right? Are you just going to...
You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to tweet out the event page, because that way they can choose to join into the active participation or just
yeah.
Student-centered writing strategies. Is that what we're doing? Student-centered writing?
Yeah, just put writing.
All right. Let's do it.
Perfect. So, hello, everyone. What's your student name, Alice, that's joining us?
Oh, Allison.
Allison, hello, Allison. Alice put a link in your Google Classroom to get to today's meet. So if you can access that.
Since she's only watching, she might be trying to multitask a little bit. So don't get discouraged. A lot of my students will watch this afterwards.
Perfect. Well.
So why don't we introduce, what would you define, Shaelynn, as student-centered?
Let me just go through here real quick.
I don't want to derail you.
I think,
got your slides?
Yeah, you can tweet out those ones. Yeah, I have another set too for your kids later, but, or not kids, your students. I always call them kids. All my kids.
14 years.
It is, isn't it? I think that probably a couple things make it student-centered. First is the focus that you teach the writer, or you teach the reader, or you teach the student, not the content. And so when you look at how to teach writing and how to teach reading, you're focusing on skills that they can use no matter what they're reading or what they're writing, from here and ever after and ever after. So that, with that in mind, and you are following the core, it should be more student-centered because you're finding what are they on the cusp of understanding and then helping them, either small group or one-on-one, obtain those different skills to apply to their writing. So in theory, you could have different plans for each student. That would be one way to differentiate student-centered. Now, student voice and choice also comes into, oh, I think we had a joiner, Alice. Student voice and choice also comes into the classroom when you look at student-centered writing. So are you giving them choices not only to work through the writing process, because not everyone goes through the same stages in the same sequence, and are you giving them different options for purpose, audience, and publishing platform? So all of those things would lead to a student-centered writing classroom. Let's see here. Oh, yep, you have some stuff on there. Allison, single subject English. Allison, you'll have to tell me what that means and let me know exactly how that is defined or what that means.
Okay.
Because I teach English too, and so you probably thought, oh, literacy, fabulous. But I know one reason, and Allison and I have talked about this before, is student-centered writing and writing and literacy in general is a part of everyone's curriculum. And so if there are a few things that I want you to remember about this talk or about student-centered writing, is 4 things. First, every educator is a teacher of literacy. And that seems daunting to some because they're like, how can I be a teacher of literacy? But you are if you take the angle that I'm the best reader and writer in my classroom for that particular content area. So for instance, if you had a science educator on here, they would think and talk and explain and model and scaffold and help students understand what scientists write, what people in that profession write. And so you're not going to teach Huck Finn in science classroom, but you are going to explicitly teach them how to demonstrate their understanding in a sort of science genre type of writing. Does that make sense, Alice?
Oh, yeah.
And this,
story that derail you?
In what?
Can I share a story, or does that mess you up?
No, go ahead. So, yep, go ahead.
My son is, oh yeah, terribly shy, like so introverted. Can I share a story, or does that mess you up? Like he doesn't even have to library because he'd have to talk to the librarian. And when asked to write on the zoo, he just took chaos. So the quality of his writing is, you know, he didn't really care about it. And that's kind of the bottom line, right? And I wrote with the zoo. But then when you ask him to write about the quality and creating a zoo in Minecraft and making an argument why a Minecraft zoo is regular than a regular zoo, oh my gosh, you cannot shut this kid up. In fact, I said, son, could you create a zoo in Minecraft, write your paper on this, and present it to your class? I know I could do that, and gives me a high five. My son is painfully shy, and he's giving me a high five, excited about presenting something to his class that he wrote.
And I think that's a beautiful example, Alice, because it is not about necessarily Minecraft or the zoo, but he is demonstrating his understanding, his communication through a different mode than traditional. It's called unimodal. So if you look at all of the things in the past, what we traditionally wrote, it was just print on a piece of paper, and that's known as unimodal. But we are living in a world where most form of communication is done digitally, and it's known as something called multimodal. So if you look at something in the digital world, it usually includes design elements. It includes audio, video, pictures, things are hyperlinked, and also emotion. And so no longer is communication just one way. I think it's difficult to think about how kids can demonstrate their understanding in a different way, just like your son did. It's awesome.
Sorry. So what I told my son was, and I'm mentioning this because we're really learning about learning objectives in this class. The learning objective is not the zoo. The teacher is not actually trying to teach the kids the zoo. The actual learning objective is to make an argument and to support it with evidence from readings. So does it really matter if they're right? So that I think is something that's really hard, is we get an idea for an assignment and it becomes about the assignment rather than, really focusing on what is the learning objective. What are you really, really trying to teach them, not what is the means that you're using to teach them.
So I see some of your other students joining. Welcome. Hello, everyone. I'm Shaelynn from Iowa. I met Alice a few summers ago. That's a whole nother story. And anyway, I am passionate about literacy and multimodal communication. A couple things we were just speaking about are some things that I want to make sure that you walk away with tonight. The first is every educator, no matter what content area they are, subject or grade they are in teaching, they are teachers of literacy. And that means that you are explicitly helping students understand how to read and how to write or create content in your specific content area. So if you think about, we said science earlier, what do scientists what do people in that profession usually read, write? Those are the types of literacy skills that you need to help students not only understand but also master, and that they can apply it. So that was the first big one. The second big rock is oftentimes, especially if you teach upper high school or junior college, whatever your role may be, you seem, when you scan the room, you might be a little bit intimidated that there could be a better writer in this classroom than me. And what you have to remember is you are the content expert and you have much more practice reading and writing in that specific content field. So you need to use those skills to share with your kids. Don't be afraid to write in front of your kids, scaffold things, show them your mistake, work through it in their head, because that teaches them not how to deal with content, but how to work through problems and how to become a writer and demonstrate their understanding on their own. The third thing that I want you to remember is it's very important to use mentor examples. And when I say mentor examples, the people on today's meet, they probably came across this in their training for English, but mentor examples means that you have a stellar piece, a stellar example that students can approach from multiple angles. And it used to be just limited to like a book or an article, but think of a mentor video. So when my students were creating videos, my problem was if I showed them an example video from the years past, they would give me exactly the same sample video I showed them. And it didn't dawn on me until a few years ago that why did I not show them a mentor video? And so having a video not related to the content, but the author uses awesome audio, sound effects that progresses the message. The images are tight and promote that communication. There's a structure and a storyline. So having 2 or 3 mentor videos or images, digital blog posts, whatever the kids might be writing and sharing their understanding in, for them to look at how does somebody who would be considered an expert do it, and how can I use those audio skills into my own video and use those same sort of thinking. So again, I know I'm going to say it over and over, it's about skills. How do we give them skills and strategies to communicate effectively the messages that they want, no matter what content area they're in. And the last one is we need the kids to write. So if you look at any subject area, typically students demonstrate their understanding through writing. No matter what content area it may be, they have to form some sort of communication. And when I say writing, I use that loosely. Communication, they have to form their message and demonstrate their understanding of a concept. So if they don't have practice consistently on it, then then they won't gain those skills. It won't become automatic. They'll just be rote, memorization, and recall. So I'm going to stop talking. I've talked tons. Alice, I don't know if any of your
You muted yourself, and I didn't get the last part of it.
I was just wondering if any of your students had any questions about literacy or...
Anyone have any literacy questions?
I'm pretty good.
So I'm a math teacher, and I think a common misconception is we don't teach literacy. And first of all, we all teach literacy of academic reading. Even kids who are really good readers really struggle with reading a textbook in academic reading. And math is, of course, its own literacy, but you know what we shouldn't be getting off the hook. There is writing to be done in math, and traditionally kids aren't asked to do that. But that's one of the things I love about the Common Core, is that kids are asked, instead of just spending their whole time cranking out algorithms, which for some students is not making them passionate about learning math, but rather to make connections to it in the real world. And the more that you can personalize that, it's like, so what's in your world that you can connect this to, and explain how the math works in that, and to, you know, and ask them to write. I think that something that's going to be really hard for a while is for math teachers to really learn how to be literacy teachers, because we are. So what else do you guys want to know? Anyone have any questions? All right, Shaelynn, take it on.
Oh, can I ask a question here? Am I good?
No, please do.
Finally,
I always feel like it's okay to jump in, right, Shaelynn?
She's muted, but that looked like a yes.
That is a yes. Yes, that is a yes.
I'm actually taking a literacy class right now, and something that I found particularly interesting was redefining the idea of text, and I was curious what your spin on that might be. We were trying to come up with a term. Do we call them sources? Do we call them texts? Do we call them ideas? How do we redefine that so that we can get people to do cross or interdisciplinary literacy and try to get the actual instructors and content areas talking to each other?
So I think you brought up two different categories, and please chime in because I was not in your classroom, so I don't know how it was presented. But I think kind of what you were speaking about, there's different forms of communication than there was in years past.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about resources, there is no common term for them. So in the literacy foundation theories, it has moved from digital literacy, is what they call it, digital literacies, and would be the resources. But the new term that I've seen popping up, in this is in the ELA realm, is techno-literacies, and so I like that one. I think that's awesome. So somebody can be techno-literate, or you can have techno-literacies, or it can be techno-literacy. Does that make sense? And so I'm kind of using that term. The other one that you'll hear in kind of the professional realm in ELA would be multimodal. So that term, multimodal communication, multimodal resource, means that it's not just one way to get the message across or to consume the message or understand it. So I think those are probably the two most common things that you'll hear. But yeah, I think you bring up a good point. People don't know how to classify them. And
it's hard when you want to talk about it. It's like, oh, so what is your thing when we're trying
yes. Well, let me throw this out to your group, because you guys may be experiencing this. So the state of Iowa, we have a huge population of one-to-one schools, right? Okay. And my job is I support 60-some districts, 55 are one-to-one in some capacity. Wow. So if I walk into school, they pretty much have technology all around. These kids, and it's been around for years, these kids have put out massive amounts of things, published, different venues, blogs, videos. Now the real hitch is, and Alice, you'll have to weigh in on this, is I read an article the other day about a grad school student refusing to use Turnitin because he published, and he was pretty sure that when he used Turnitin, he would be flagged for his other published articles and posts and those types of things that are already present on the web. So that was a new angle, a new spin on that I thought,
If you talk to John Crippo, he's really anti-Turnitin.com. I mean, one of the things is they collect student samples, so schools are paying to give them the content. And when you, I mean, data and information is very valuable, but then it's exactly that same problem where things that you've written can be used against you. And instead of it actually finding plagiarism, it puts kids who are not plagiarizers in the position of having, they're automatically assumed guilty and they have to prove that they're not.
Exactly. And not only that, and I think that one thing that they would claim is that they're collecting all this resources because technically you are not supposed to write a paper for more than one class. So you can't take papers and turn it in for multiple classes and count it. It's kind of like double dipping. So I bet that's probably one of their claims, that they're just covering the school's back end so that a student doesn't turn in the same paper and get credit for it multiple times.
Well, I ran into writing a reflection piece and having to put it on Turnitin, and so I used samples of prior research that I had found and showed how ideas had evolved from what I had. And of course, it didn't have my name, but it had my institution from 7 years ago that came up because it's been an interest. And I'm like, oh my goodness, are you joking? This isn't word for word, and yet I still had to resubmit a paper, and it was so frustrating when I felt that showed it.
But regardless of which, we didn't have Turnitin, and kids. Cheating is not new. Should we be making students go through this process?
Yeah. Anyway, I just thought it was kind of interesting because that was a different angle that you never hear about with Turnitin. People see it as the easy way to check online resources. Did kids really use that or whatnot? But if you think about it, these kids put out so much content. Here's one from 7 years ago that you put out, and you were getting flagged on this. So it brings up a whole discussion in professional education, is all of that digital content that's out there. And the other thing you were talking about was the cross-discipline. Tell me some more about that, and then we'll have your classmates chime in about cross-discipline.
I had an awesome opportunity to go to a school where my classes were woven together, and I only went there for a year. It was way too expensive, but what was really neat was that my history class, a religion class, and a philosophy class were all one class. And then I had science, math, and health were all one class, and different things like that. They were all grouped into these 3 class chunks, and then on Fridays we would get together, and all of our professors from all of those units would get together and we'd work toward a single research project that we were working on. And so I loved that model, and I loved the communication that was happening between departments, and we really didn't fit in any single department. But when I go out and I student teach, I go into my classroom, the door shuts, and I'm lucky if I can even collaborate with the person down the hall. So I'm just trying to think, how do we get people to be, why is my credential a single subject English credential? Why isn't there more multi-subject with teaching? I'm multi-subject, but I teach English. Why can't there be more of that? It's not really a question. I guess it's just a frustration.
Well, there is. It's called elementary teacher, right, Alice? Aren't they like multi-subject? You teach it all.
Yeah, but even then, you're still a little inclined to teach it in subject silos.
What about Lee? Does he have anything to add there?
And you know what? I'm writing a blog post right now on modern lesson planning. I should include that.
About single subject and multiple subject, I guess it's just to fulfill like state standards, because it's what's academically accepted, so it's what's normal also. And then just recently we're interested in like applying academics into real world applications. So I'm pretty sure there'll be in the future there'll be like a new rise of interest in multiple subjects at higher level education, or in college or high school education.
That's a good point, Lee. Yeah, that would be interesting. Am I frozen, Alice?
No.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Um, that would be interesting to see what education morphs in um, as far as the blending of contents and areas, because that's how the real world is, right?
Yeah.
We're not siloed individuals, but I'll tell you a couple of experiences that I've had. There's always pockets of innovation everywhere at the school that you went to. Um, Allison, there's schools, a few of those schools in Iowa like that. Um, there was a school a few years back, and it was destroyed by a tornado. Do you guys have tornadoes in California?
No, not really.
No, okay. So it's snowing right now outside my house, and yes, we have tornadoes in the summer, so extremes. Anyway, tornado ruined this school, and so it was rebuilt. And what they decided is an innovative space. They put all of the teachers grade level wise in wings. So they really set it up so it could be a blending of all the content areas. It wasn't no bells, there was movable walls, great furniture that you could change and manipulate to fit student needs. And what they found was that within 1 month, 80% of their teachers reverted back to 40-minute single subject classes. They were given free rein. They said you can plan and use your time however you want to. You can do things collaboratively, and you guys can say, I'm going to, teach an hour and a half today. And what they did is, it's called, Dan Lordy is the person that coined this. It's called the apprentice by observation. And he says that we revert, unless it's continually applied and enforced in the classroom, we revert to how we've always done it or how we were taught. So be on the lookout when you have your first classroom, or maybe you've already had one and you're just back refreshing and gaining knowledge, but falling back into the pattern unless it is reinforced in the classroom. So apprenticeship by observation, that's what it's called.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting. Cross content, again, I truly think you're limited unless you have a very tight held administration that doesn't allow those types of freedoms. But I really truly think that you are limited only by your own will to provide those cross collaborative experiences for kids. I did quite a few in my town under 1,000 people here in Iowa. And I don't know if Alice even knows this, but one tweet actually connected my class with Sweden. And so we were connected with a Swedish class of philosophy, and we were talking about existentialism and the stranger, and then we had them do a project using Google Slides, so they collaborated, and that way. But at the very end, we actually ended up traveling to Sweden to meet our classmates. And so you never know what can happen, even in small town Iowa with under 1,000 people. Two of my kids have never even been on a plane before. We drove up to Chicago and flew 9 hours to Sweden, all because of digital communication and the desire to apply those understandings across curricular areas. So I think there's people willing out there, and if not in your own building, reach out. There's education groups all over that would support those things.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let's see here. So a couple general things, and you guys are ELA teachers, but everyone has literacy standards. And what Alice was talking about earlier with the math teachers, and it's hard to comprehend that they are also instructors of reading and instructors of writing, which means you explicitly teach them skills. You don't just say write. But they have the same 10 anchor standards that we do as literacy teachers. If you look at the writing ones, the first three, right, are types. They're not genres. They made them general. They start with argument and opinion, then informational, and then narrative. So those are the first three, and then all the ones that underneath that fall to support those different types of writing. So just like reading, sometimes those blended types fit better in different content areas. Narrative fits nicely in the in the ELA classroom, but that's not to say that literacy cannot blend nicely with informational text. And that should be something familiar with the students that you're teaching. So, for instance, I don't know if you guys watch the Food Network or cooking shows, but there's this cook named the Pioneer Chef or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So if you look on her blog is not just informational about recipes, but it's blending this rich narrative of her home life and living in the South and all of these types of things. And so providing,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
and so
the blog, yeah.
yes, yeah, and so you know, blending those different types across all content areas is appropriate and expected. The ones underneath that, 5 through 10, or sorry, 4 through 10, are different skills that readers and writers, students, can apply to whatever type they are working on. So you focus on the writer, not the writing. You're not focusing on the content. So the math teacher should not only teach specific math, help me out here, Alice, math equations and those types of, what am I saying here, methods, but they should also teach them how to write like a mathematician, that they can apply no matter what.
Also, math is used in everyday life. And, my dad, he's an engineer, so it's really kind of a math field, but he has to write proposals. So even though he's got a math degree, he doesn't spend, he doesn't have a math degree, he's an engineering degree, but even he's in a kind of a math field, he doesn't spend all day doing equations. No, he has to write everything in a narrative where he's explaining it to, someone to say, this is why we should get the job, this is how much, it's not just a detailing of how much things cost, but why, and connecting those. There's so much writing in math field. So I wanted to be, I have a math degree, I wanted to be an actuary, but I still would not be sitting around just cranking out statistics to see what the life expectancy of somebody who's a non-smoker is. I would have to engage that in a narrative around explaining the ideas and saying, this is how much we charge you for our insurance. But there's a very technical writing piece that goes along with that.
That's right.
You have to clearly communicate to a lot of audiences with your numbers. And more than that, you can't just list the numbers. You have to explain it to them.
I used to have to explain tax returns to people, and I was always the one who had to send the email and write it out and explain it because no one else could write in our office. Kind of got bored of that, and now I'm an English major.
Yeah, so those three, and if you look at, I was going to have you pull up like your Facebook or whatever social media and see what types of writing you would find on your Facebook feed. All different types of writing, usually blended, and you can put subgenres underneath all of those three types at the top of the first three standards. Now 5 and 10, standard number 5 talks about you have to have kids in the writing process. So again, you want them to write. Not everything is going to take to the publishable state. So there's some things we as adults, we as professionals, also need to model to students that we don't take to the publishable state. That's what standard number 5 supports, that you have them in various components of the writing process. Number 10 says you need to have them write routinely so it becomes a habit. If you don't have them practice, just like anything, they're not going to understand all of those skills and how to apply them across genres, types.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So would spelling be as important then, if you're just wanting them to write?
What do you think, Lee? I get this conversation all the time. You tell me.
Because I don't think spelling matters as much as long as,
I think it matters differently.
like,
I think it matters.
So just so you know, one of the Common Core standards is spells correctly. That's the whole standard. So I don't think we want to ignore that spelling is important. Spelling is important because when you don't spell correctly, it's embarrassing.
Well,
wouldn't
and
grammar be more important? Like, structure?
Yeah, well, that is important also, but let's not ignore the existence of spell check and grammar checkers. And so rather than pretending that technology doesn't exist, we teach it in different ways. We teach them that when there is a wavy red line, you fix that.
I also we do spelling and vocabulary lessons in my English class, and what surprises me is that when we're doing them, the students actually, one, really need them, and two, we're teaching them how to understand roots, and so it's literacy in a much deeper way. It's, can you look at that and know that Nov means 9 because we're talking about November, but also if we're going to talk about novennial, or if we're going to talk about, I don't know, anything. Like, that's a basic example, but what else did we teach them? We were teaching them like pan or different roots. I mean, you're thinking panorama, you're going, okay, great, they're thinking of the shoebox they made in 4th grade, but if you're teaching them the roots, then when they go into the world, they can interpret other things and go, oh, wait, what is this talking about? Like, what am I seeing? What am I?
That's an important distinction. Is you're getting into the spelling words and you're using them rather than here, list out your spelling words 10 times and memorizing them. I think that concept of just memorize and write stuff is hopefully on the way out, and we're more so thinking about how we critically analyze it. See, that's valuable, and interpreting it and using it in a context and doing something with it, but valuing spelling, which is different than memorizing spelling.
Right.
So a couple things that I know for a fact is, yes, Lee, spelling correctly does count in the Common Core, but that's not to say that everything that a student writes needs to have perfect spelling.
Mm-hmm.
So spelling and looking at grammar, usage, and mechanic, which is part of the language standards, right? You're talking about structure, so you could incorporate that and blend those grammar, usage, and mechanics, but that would be towards the end point of a writing process, right? So yes, we want students to be able to write on demand and write coherently, but there's still going to be some errors in there, grammar, usage, mechanics, spelling. If we have a student sit down and have one class period to write something, demonstrate their understanding, it's not going to be error-free. The way that you are going about it, Allison, is correct. So you want to teach morphemes of the words. You don't want to just teach the words. And there's a whole structure called Words Their Way that supports that theory and that learning.
I just feel like it's learning instead of memorizing. You can memorize how to spell the word, but do you know the word? Have you learned the word is the difference. And it makes their parents thrilled when it comes to the SAT.
Of course. The other thing that I know, and this kind of relates to Lee's discussion, was grammar is best taught within the writing of the student, not as an isolated DOL, put it in the morning, up on the board for kids to fix. Unless you have a specific class taught by a highly skilled teacher of literacy who knows grammar inside and out, and that is all that they do in that class for the semester, that is the only way that grammar transfers to a student's writing. But having the DOL does not transfer to student writing. Instead, you need to use the grammar and the spelling and everything and fold it within their reading and writing. And you'll find that through all sorts of leading experts, from Calkins to Graves to Elbows. All of those big names that are cornerstones in literacy have said that for years. So structure is important, and that's number 4, structure, and is it coherent, but it doesn't mean that it's error-free. If there's so many errors that it impedes your message, then it becomes an issue. And is it something that you're going to take to a publishable state? It should be pretty much error-free. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Like you said, it does have to be like error free. Like everyone else has to understand it, right? So for the spelling, and then I really like Allison's idea of the morphemes, like you said, because that lets you understand new words as well, because they all have the base roots. So yeah.
And I know this is totally nerding out here, and I was not going to go in depth like this, but to kind of branch off of what Allison talked about with those morphemes, and just for your guys' own knowing and understanding, in Appendix A of the Common Core, there is, they're called Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 vocabulary words, and it really helps guide you on choosing effective words for kids to memorize, know, understand, and apply. So tier 1 would be common everyday ones that they'll pick up. Tier 2 would be ones that are a little more sophisticated, but they'll find across disciplines. And Tier 3 would be those specific jargon used in content areas. They really want you to focus on those Tier 2 words for vocabulary instruction, ones that kids will apply across multiple disciplines. Not that those Tier 3 words aren't important, but typically if you ask the average middle school literacy teacher what is a dangling participle, they would probably have to look it up. So those really highly specialized words and content areas aren't necessary for kids to be quizzed over in vocab and that sort of thing. For a spelling word, they need to beef up their Tier 2 words.
Oops, I was muted. I feel like I've learned the tiers also in an, what was it? It was a different Lee class, and it was for English language learners, and we were talking about like survival words versus, yeah, I can't remember what Tier 2 is called, but it's like you've got the specialized content area words that they're only going to ever use there, like a dangling participle, or then the words that kind of work both ways, they're most likely going to learn it and use it, and then the basic, like, there's the door, we're going to open our book, the kind of more operable terms was what they were using for Tier 1. Do you think that's probably pretty much the same concept there?
Yep, I'm sure that they're probably pulling upon the same research. So those Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 are used widely, and I'm seeing if I have that there. So anyway, that's probably what they were referring to as well. So sorry, we don't have lots of time left, but is there anything specific? I know we haven't talked about student-centered, but again, remember, if you're teaching the writer and not the content, you are helping them develop as writers. Is there anything like from the publishable state that you would like to talk about, maybe see examples, hear about from publishing platforms?
Oh, goodness. I meant to do more research before I joined, and I got stuck at school late.
Oh, you don't have to do any research. So I will, I'll just share a couple of things just to get your minds flowing here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Publishing allows students to take their message, their writing, their communication, and give it to an audience different than the traditional lone teacher. And so in years past, they've always said, have the kids imagine that they're writing for so-and-so. But now that's actually a reality. They can write for those primary sources, those experts, those people in the profession, other peers from across the globe. So it doesn't have to just be imaginary. And what that does is if you give them the audience that's different than the traditional lone teacher, or have them choose one, then it boosts their engagement and it provides more purpose. Probably the thing that was most influential in my class was blogging. And so when we had blogs and we formed a blogging community with other schools, they learned so many things about communicating effectively that I could never have simulated in the classroom, so to speak. It was awesome. Everything from how to title a blog to a misspelling of a word and how that was interpreted by somebody who got offended, and how do you reproach that. So having them choose a different audience than the traditional lone teacher boosts engagement, but then not only that, have them deliver it. So not imagine this audience, but then give it to that audience. Different ways that I've seen kids do this, and again, the sky's the limit, is blogging. One thing that I would say about blogging is it's kind of like herding cats the first time you get them to set it up. But again, once they have one, they can use it for multiple things, a personal one, an Xbox one for science. So blogs can be very versatile. The first time they set it up, it is like herding cats. The other thing about blogging is if you have no thought on how can I get people to read my kids' blogs and interact with them, then basically they're turning it into an invisible teacher, so it does no good. So planning, who can I connect with, a different class, maybe in your building or across town, or tweeting out there, connect with the class first so they have that interaction. Otherwise, again, it's just basically writing to you. So that would be my advice for blogging. The second thing is don't forget about the use of multimedia. Kids can use video not only for a quick self-expressive, you could exit ticket type thing with that YouTube editor now. They could quickly upload that, or they can create something professional looking to submit to a contest. Kids love doing videos, but with that being said, remember to put it in a writing frame of work. It's going to have different design elements and that sort of thing. But what they get hiccups on is they forget to slow down and plan through different templates or screenshots, or what images do they need, and they just grab the camera and go. So think about the writing process and apply that to creating a video. And that's where kids typically get those hiccups, is they don't plan. Of course, Alice said Minecraft. My kids used Minecraft and virtual reality, Blender, all types of things in the ELA classroom to demonstrate their understanding. Something cool that I did with the kids was a multi-genre research paper, and so they had to not only take the elements of writing, but they had to demonstrate their understanding of an argument that they were making in 3 different types of mediums. So that's when they had the golden thread. So they were, concerned about, let's say, animal abuse, and they had a video, a letter to the editor, their paper. So there's lots of different ways that kids can communicate the same message. Having them take one area and apply it to different mediums really helps them to explore what's the best platform to get my message out.
Gotcha.
The last one would be social media, is to help them not only communicate effectively on social media, but have them use social media to benefit them, not get used by social media. So what we're seeing lately is a lot of kids are, especially if you have middle school, high school kids you're teaching in that realm, they are constantly connected and constantly communicating. And what's that? And that's they're bringing a lot of issues into the classroom that haven't been there before. Feeling left out, depression. So flipping that and how to use social media not only to be advocates for yourself, but for others. There's one great site I'm going to give you guys to explore, but it's all student-led. It's based off of the Instagram account Humans of New York. Have you guys seen that one on
Oh, yeah.
Instagram? Humans.
I've seen that
There's
one.
this one. Have you? There's this one in Iowa, and it started popping up. It's called Stories of Waukee, and it's completely student ideas generated. They're the ones that keep it up, and it's multi-platform, so they're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and they share stories of students inside their own school daily to advocate for a healthy climate and culture. And I'm like, wow, these kids are amazing. And so I don't know how this landed here, but it's true. A lot of social media, our students are being gobbled up by it, and instead we need to help them understand how to use it to their advantage, not be taken advantage of it. So those are some interesting ones that I've seen lately. What about you guys? Have you seen any interesting publishing?
I struggle with my students. Well, the school I'm at right now, they have plenty of access to technology. They don't have classrooms or tablets or anything in the classroom, but I mean, at least on campus, they can go, they can find it. Most of them have a computer at home. But last semester, my placement, students didn't have computers. They were borrowing cell phones from family members to be able to get online. And what was so hard for me is that I feel like whatever literacy term we want to use for online and digital things is important for them, but I couldn't figure out, how do I get them there? How do I, I mean, I can take them outside and have them share their ideas publicly, but how do I publish my students when they don't even have the access? And I would love your advice on that.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was in my grad studies, some of the things that I read spoke exactly to the situation you were describing. So students, the fastest growing discrepancy in students is no longer socioeconomics, but those with access to technologies and those without, because of the vast information and the access to opportunities that are available online that they don't get access to. And so you're seeing a huge jump in that. I had the opportunity to work with an inner city school, Chicago, and the teacher there, this was his 7th year, and he's lost 27 of his kids. 27 to violence. And so that kind of gives you an understanding of these kids. And it was really unique. We were able to work with the staff and the kids, and I thought, dang, we're trying to have them create public service announcements, and they're living in food deserts. This doesn't make sense here. So it's great when you have students like that to make sure that they're using that not for fluff, but for social justice movements, actions, letting them know the different resources available to publish their voice and create change, breaking cycles. And I would do a lot of group work, small group work, and tape it off one camera and push it out to a classroom YouTube channel or a classroom blog. So, you might have, they call scribes a day, and you have one blog for your class, and each person's going to be the scribe, and they're going to send out, the blog post of learning. Or you could have a social media manager for the classroom, and it rotates each week, and they got to do 3 tweets and 2 Instagram posts or whatnot. But having that access is just so vitally important. Even if it is combined, at least they're seeing and understanding what's possible, and they're feeling empowered to share their voice too, because that's what we want kids to feel, empowered and know that yes and, not yes but, because they get that enough at home. So those are some things that I would suggest. Plus, there is tons of different resources and grants out there that especially help school districts that serve those kinds of kids. And I'm sure probably Alice probably has a list in her many lists of things, but yeah, encouraging the people that you work with to apply for those. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Allison, Lee?
I'll let Lee speak. I feel like I've dominated the conversation.
No, it's fine because I'm pretty new in here, so I don't know too much yet.
Well, I appreciate you guys joining in tonight. This was actually very fun. At first I thought, oh no, Alice, nobody's going to be here, and I'm not good.
I was here from the beginning, but I couldn't get in. So
I thought, Alice, I am not good at just speaking to myself. I would be a terrible one-way speaker. I have to have other people, so I appreciate you guys taking time out of your night. Hey, Alice.
hey.
And Alice has a resource, just some fun things to look at or consider. It's tons of Google stuff to help different stages in the writing process. So I
see like retweeting it and saying this was gold.
Oh, really? Good, thank you.
Well, good job. Shaelynn, thank you so much for doing this. And I know that we only had a few students show up, but more will watch it later. But even just those tonight, I hope that you guys feel like that it was worth Shaelynn's time. Thanks.
Thank you guys. And have a great day.
A couple of guest blog posts for me on alicekeeler.com about student-centered writing. So if you want to look up some more resources on that, you can check out my blog and hers.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Good night, guys.
Good night, guys. I'm going to go out to 30 degrees and snow. It's snowing here. Have fun in California.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thanks,